Hello folks and welcome to our game here today with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined today by Nisha Waldron, of course, a regular on the show, who was down at the Gaelic grounds yesterday to watch Ballygunner against the Pearshig, a Stonewall Classic. A reminder, first of all, we're brought to you by OurGameSupporters.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. But Nisha, there's a lot of games to talk about, but we really do have to go straight to what I would consider one of the best club hurling matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was like, and even kind of going down to the game, you were kind of hoping something like that would happen. But then when you actually see it and the way it went, it was even better than what you were kind of going to imagine. And like just talking to some of the lads after it, and even while the game was unfolding, you know, like 11 years ago when I was hurling Ballygunner, like we were beaten in a Munster semi-final by the Pearshig when we were 6 up and ended up losing by like 7. And that all switched around the last kind of 15 minutes. And then they ended up walking a Munster final really against a Clare champion. So it was funny the way it kind of it switched around, and there's always been this huge rivalry with Ballygunner and the Pearshig in the Munster Championship since then, I suppose, because we would have felt at the time we left the Munster Championship behind us. So that was great, and a lot of the lads that were playing yesterday would have actually been involved in that too. But it was some game. It had everything except like a red card, which is great, but it had everything. The goals, all the goals were class in different ways. Some of the point scoring was unreal. The tactical kind of battles and stuff. And I know on TV it probably looked like lads were free all over the place, but it was really interesting when you're kind of looking at it from the height that I was at, you know, in the commentary box looking down. It was just class. It's everything you would want.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through some of the lads who did the scoring and some of the main events, and then you might just tell us some of those things that you spotted from like that. The press box in Limerick, the high one for the broadcasting, is unbelievable because you're right over the pitch. You're looking down on the pitch. Over the top basically of the selectors and the mentors and all that. It's absolutely brilliant. But the Pearshig led 2-11 to 1-9 at the break. Keith Dempsey and Conor Boylan, they'd scored the goals. Desi Hutchinson and Patrick Fitzgerald, who I'd be very surprised if he's not involved with the Waterford Seniors next year, they scored the goals for the Gunners. Conor Sheehan scored 4 points. Peter Casey did a fair bit of scoring. There was just brilliant performances all around. But just tell us, from that sort of cockpit view up there, what were the things that stood out to you? By the way, we have Fintan O'Toole, I should say, joining us as well here. But Nisha, take it away.
So, like immediately for the first about 10-15 minutes, you could kind of see that the Pearshig were doing, and they did similar against Cool. I remember in the All-Ireland final to kind of counteract Con's influence, where they dropped back. We'll say it was Ronan Lynch was dropping back and covering basically the whole left-hand side of the defence. So they weren't really marking like kind of man on man or anything. We were all trying to figure out before the game, I wonder who'd be on Desi, who'd pick up Desi. And I was talking to John Milan while we were watching the Bears game on telly. And he was saying that he had heard it'd be Mike Casey, and I was kind of like, God, I don't know about that. But it was swapping between Emmett McAvoy and Mike Casey. But then the lads on the left end, so like Jerome Boylan and Ronan Lynch, were cutting out the left hand side. So anytime Desi tried to run to the left, they were just there. So Desi was like completely out of the game, and it took a while for the Ballygunner lads to realise what was happening. And geez, like the Pearshig just had a stranglehold on the game where you're kind of like, God, this could get. Like actually, I was talking to one of the lads after, and he goes, that could have gotten ugly pretty quickly. And I was like, yeah. But anyway, so then after a while, you could kind of see around kind of the 13th, 14th minute, somewhere around there, you could kind of tell then that the Ballygunner lads realised what was happening. So they actually started overloading one area. So they put 3 or 4 forwards to one area, and then they were maybe outnumbering the Pearshig backs, and then they were getting bodies around the breaks and all this kind of stuff. And another reason why the Pearshig, I suppose, were getting on top, and their goals, especially Conor Boylan's goal, when they were running through and breaking through at great speed, was for the first time that I had seen since this Ballygunner team went in this run, was that Philip and Shane O'Sullivan especially were getting dragged out the field into midfield, which never happens. So then they were just getting getting bodies around the ball. Huh?
Why did it happen?
I don't know. It was like they were just following their men out, which they don't usually do. So it was strange to see it, because usually it would be a case of, right, Conor Sheehan, Paddy Levy, whoever else from the half-hour line would come out, maybe Pádraig would come out, and then this area would be all clogged up so Philip can sit back. But for whatever reason, whatever way, and the Pearshig sucked them into their plan, Shane and Philip especially were getting kind of dragged out, and next thing they were hitting the ball over into Breen, who, look, and actually, William Hayne as well, who was brilliant in the first half. They made the ball, you know, something Matthew sort of said, like, you know, make it stick. when it goes in there, when we bring everybody out and it goes in there, you have to make it stick. And then next thing, the runners come through the middle and it's getting pop, 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 almost impossible to stop. So it was really intriguing. And you kind of thought at half time, you know, any normal team, I suppose, would have kind of said at half time, we need to make 2 or 3 subs here. But like, it was listening to Dara talking after it, saying, you know, first and foremost, the most important thing was we didn't panic. Like, they didn't make any subs until the last 5 or 10 minutes, when you kind of thought in the first 5 minutes in the second half, you need to take off, maybe bring in 2 lads, like bring in Harry Ruddle, bring in Billy O'Keefe, bring in whoever. But they just stuck with their plan. And actually, again, while I was on the way out of the stadium, the lads, the Ballygunner lads, were coming out, so I was kind of talking to a few of them for a while there. They were getting on the bus and all, and one of them said, you know, he goes, we kind of got out of jail a bit. I don't know what they did in the second half, but it played right into our hands. And I remember I was kind of thinking, yeah, because it was almost, and he goes, I think they thought they had it won. And I was kind of like, yeah, maybe. Because it was like they kind of were just trying to stop Ballygunner from scoring goals or something, and just said, right, we'll hold on, we'll see it out. But it was like, yeah, but there's 25 minutes left in the game, and next thing, Philip came into the game, Ronan Power came into the game, you know, Connor Sheen was absolutely brilliant, Peter Hogan was brilliant. Whereas, like, you know, someone like Kevin and Mikey Mahoney were probably on the scoreboard now, quieter than they usually would be. Next thing, you know, Pádraig stood up, Pat Fitzgerald, you know, scored 1-1 and set up Desi's goal. Like, just different people stood up when it was needed. Like, it was just an all-round savage team performance, really.
Yeah, Fintan, what were your thoughts on the game and how Ballygunner managed to turn it around?
I think it was probably just a testament to kind of how much they've grown. I think since maybe the last time they lost to Na Piarsaigh was 5 years ago, the 2017 final, and just what's happened to them since is an evolution of the team. It's interesting if you look at the team sheets, how much the Ballygunner team has changed in comparison to the Na Piarsaigh one. Now, I know different guys like Will Henn is probably a bit more prominent now. Emmett McAvoy is a new player into it, and Keith Dempsey, but generally the core of the Na Piarsaigh team is pretty much the same. Say David Breen, okay, came on as a late sub. He was very influential in that 2017 final, and Shane Dowling has dropped away. But it's the players that Ballygunner have brought into it since, and how I suppose the kind of headlock that Na Piarsaigh had Ballygunner in for a while there in the Munster Club Championship for a 5 or 6 year period. Doesn't seem any kind of baggage. You know, the likes of looking at the team sheet now, like Ty Foley, Ronan Power, like in that 2017 final, for example, Connor Sheehan was just coming on as a sub. Obviously, he's Paddy Levy next to him. Like, they produced such a big partnership with them then. And then, like, the only 2 of the forwards that are kind of still around from kind of that time are Pádraig Mahoney and Peter Hogan. You know, the 2 other Mahonies have come into it. Obviously, Desi Hutchinson has come back, Patrick Fitzgerald. So there's no sense of like being 5 points down. And maybe, I was thinking at the time, I was thinking, God, you know, this is a bit of the Na Piarsaigh hoodoo coming back. But then when you actually look at it, like, they don't really seem to have that kind of baggage. And the way Darragh O'Sullivan, as Daoise said, the way he talked afterwards, you know, there was no major personnel changes. The timing of the second goal was obviously kind of crucial, the way it happened. Both of them, you know, both goals, I think the way Na Piarsaigh dealt with them in defence, you know, I think that's something they're going to look back on with regrets. But in fairness, it was a testament as well to Ballygunner, the way that they got the goals in both of them. Like, if you think of the first one, Daithí Dempsey, I think, had a chance to put Na Piarsaigh up 7-2. And then from the following puck out, initially, it looks like the savage work rate in the Piarsaigh had in the first half. It looks like they've completely Tyke Foley bottled up. He gets it to Shane O'Sullivan. Then when he gets it back, you definitely think he's going to be overturned. But the moment he got it away, and straight away, once it's Philip Mahoney gets the ball, he's the one who hits it long. Now, still, you think Na Piarsaigh should have maybe dealt with it a little bit better. But suddenly, all of a sudden, it was a 1 point game instead of Na Piarsaigh being up by 5. I know that was the margin at half time. And then similarly, once they got that second goal, it was a 1 point game again. We even said that, I think it was around the 51st, 52nd minute. There was 2 points in it. It was Kevin Dowling missed the free straight after Peter Casey missed the point. There was kind of times that it could be, but it's unbelievable how much the Piarsaigh scoring rate dried up. Like, they had 2-11 on the board after 27 minutes. I mean, like, you were there, Laoise. I mean, it looked like perfect conditions for hurling. No real problems kind of that way. It was amazing that they only hit 4 points over the last 33 minutes. But I just think whatever, you know, psychological breakthrough Ballygunner got from that 2018 Munster final win, and subsequently from what they got from that All-Ireland win, there's just no sense of panic now. You know, to just use that phrase, it's kind of trusting in the process, is just sticking to it, like, you know, and they're just so experienced, like, and I think that is, like, it's one of their big, I think it's, obviously there's no silverware on the table, but I think just the manner in which they did it against the quality of the team, kind of later with Limerick All-Ireland senior winners, it's a huge statement from them.
Yeah, I just want to read out a couple of the comments here. Shane Power says, what a winner for the Gunners yesterday. To outscore the Pierce 111-4 in the second half was incredible. Joe Butler, the key to Ballygunner's win was that they never panicked. As they say, they stuck to the process. One Stop Auto says, the Pierce tried to bully Ballygunner with dirty tackles first half and couldn't keep with them in the second half. James Daly, serious game to be at in Limerick yesterday. And the Pierce a great first half, but tactics very strange in the second. Ballygunner were awesome though. Keep the comments coming in. Pat Fitzgerald has some talent. Ballyhale must be delighted. They're waiting for their crack off Ballygunner again, no doubt there. This wasn't far off county quality, was it, Nisha?
That's the thing. Like, it was when you were there, right? Because there wasn't a breath in it. No, it was freezing cold, but there wasn't a breath of wind, like, and it was just dry. It was nice, but it was freezing, right? So you were like, right, this will be as good as you're going to get now. There's no excuses, no nothing. That's why it was kind of funny, in winter, somebody will miss a free or two, but some of the frees that were missed, you're kind of going, Jesus, you should be scoring them, lads. But yeah, the pace, especially the first half, like, it took Ballygunner probably about 5 to 10 minutes now. If you were like there watching the two, I always love watching the two teams warming up, right, to see the difference. And Ballygunner were doing still kind of their physical warm up while the Piercy were flying hurling, doing the hurling part. And I was like, geez, they want to get moving here pretty quickly. And then that kind of showed in the game that just the Piercy started at a ferocious pace. And you're kind of thinking, if they keep this up, this could be an almighty score here now. But yeah, some of the pass and some of the score, some of the even the control, the fighting in the rucks, and yeah, I know there was a few heavy tackles, and I was even laughing like on the radio a couple of times. The ref was kind of just watching the game a lot of the time. There was a few tackles you were kind of going, Jesus, oh, this kind of stuff, but just letting it go, like, you're kind of going, right, sure, go on. But two of the best forwards in the country were playing, and then Pat Fitzgerald now as a prospect is probably as good a prospect as I've seen in a long time. He has everything. He has the speed of touch, he has the skill, he has the vision, he has the he has it up here as well. That goal he scored, because I had just been saying as well, I was like, I think he's suffering a bit physically here now. I know he's class, but at the end of the day, he's only a teenager, and it's hard to hurl against men. Your teen. Next thing, he gets onto this break, runs in, and puts away a goal that I don't care. Like, the goalie wasn't going to save it, because it looked like he was going to go near post, and then just turns his wrist, opens it up, and it's just a daisy cutter into the far corner. And Desi's one as well. Again, the two goals were kind of funny for Ballygunner, where there were high balls in that the Pierce should have really dealt with, and the ball breaks, bang, Pat Fitzgerald's onto them, and he gives a lovely pass to Desi, and Desi's goal, like, everybody in the stadium thought it was going where the keeper was moving to, across his body to his right-hand side. And at the last second, I mean, as a defender now, I'd have thought, look, Mike Casey was in the exact right spot. But Desi had a gap about that size, about 5 or 6 inches. Now, depending on what you're measuring, 5 or 6 inches can be big or small. But it went just, instead of going across, just turns his wrists at the last second again and goes, I'm after watching the replay about 3 or 4 times, I think it went through Mike Casey's legs. What can you do with that? He had a gap about that size to put it in, and he put it in it. Like, it was class. And then, like, Conor Boylan's goal was as good a team move as you're going to get.
The pass from David Dempsey.
And then the speed at which Jerome Boylan even come onto the ball, it was like no one stopping that. And it was like, as soon as he got it and broke through, you're like, well, here's a goal. And just, even though Saki was in the right place, he blasted it. Like, it was just a bullet. And now, a huge turning point, I thought, as well in the second half was, and I remember, so I was talking to Barry Coughlin after, and I said to him, like, a third goal would have really sunk you, I thought. And he goes, oh yeah. He just was kind of going, Jesus, yeah, like, but remember where Boylan had a great chance, and Shane
O'Sullivan came in and pressured him.
And it went about that, just went about this much over the crossbar, like, it peeled the paint off the crossbar, like, and it was like, if that went in, Ballygunner's momentum would have been killed, and they'd have to start again, like, whereas, you're kind of going, Jesus, Shane, like, you kind of saved us there. And it was just these little kind of things that, they're the turning and winning and losing in matches. But yeah, anyway, look, as far as quality goes, it was as good a game as I think I've seen and enjoyed all year, really.
Yeah. Fintan, that Boylan goal chance, which Shane O'Sullivan did so well for, and I would say that's a victory for the elder statesman as well, because he's on the road a long time. But between that and Mike Casey going off with what looked like a pretty serious knee injury, and that could be a big blow for Limerick next year if it does turn out to be a serious one. I mean, those couple of things there like losing Casey at that stage is such a massive blow.
Huge, and like that was in the same time frame. The 2-point chances I missed, I referenced earlier, the Downs free and the Peter Casey shot from play. That all happened in the same couple of minutes. I suppose we don't know they sent away Casey's injury, but it looked like watching replays last night, like it looked pretty bad in terms of the fact that there was no one around him. He just kind of went down, kind of holding it. And obviously, he's had such huge problems since, looking back on this morning, since October 2020. He did it first, and I'm not sure it's the same me, but when he first suffered a knee injury against Galway in challenge match just before the kind of COVID All-Ireland Championship was about to start. So that was kind of huge setbacks for them. And like the Boyle one, I kind of thought initially maybe he could have hit it a little bit earlier, but then maybe he was trying to go in that small bit kind of closer and probably have a better chance, when we don't want to be kind of giving O'Keefe kind of chance to kind of save it. Like, there was just some encouragement kind of certain stuff on the first.
Your audio's kind of a bit funny there, Finton. Maybe pull the mic out from your jumper.
I suppose they would have been so encouraged by stuff in the first half, with the way that they got those goals. I mean, the thing was, obviously, the Keith Dempsey one was an absolutely brilliant pass by Will O'Donoghue, but the way he kind of ghosted in, if you looked at the camera angle, the amount of players were kind of drawn to O'Donoghue, and the Boylan one wasn't as obvious, but it was still similar enough in terms of it was from that kind of right-hand side at the 45-yard line, the runner line kind of not being tracked, huge kind of boost for them, but just not being able to maintain it. And they surely would have fancied themselves the fact that they were playing in a pitch that's obviously so familiar to them. And, I'm sure there's kind of an ambition there for both these clubs, I think, to kind of get, like, the Piercy, look, as you well know, would have been kind of chasing that second All-Ireland was a pretty big thing for them, no Munster club outside of the City 3 in Cork in the 70s have actually won a second All-Ireland. And you think of all the great sides, like, you Dora Bearfields, Six Mile Bridge in the 90s, they only managed to win the one, and the Piercy would have been trying to win that second one. And whoever won yesterday, obviously there's still the Munster final to come. You would have thought they were in a big position. And that impetus is obviously with Ballygunner now. But like, go back to the original point you made, just that series of hammer blows with 10 minutes to go. When the score, was still within touching distance for them, it just obviously wasn't something that they could recover from. But on a wider scale, yeah, for Casey, you'd be kind of hoping for him because he gave an interview this year at the All-Ireland Hurling Championship launch in Lochmore, and just how tough it had been for him the last couple of years with COVID and kind of not being able to participate. And obviously, he made such a brilliant return to form. I suppose it just shows how fickle it is that he wins the All-Ireland, he wins a county title. This is like a dream kind of comeback year. And obviously, this could be a very, very big setback for him again.
Yeah, James Daly says, I did think that Colm Lyons was very harsh on the Piercy yesterday. Any 50-50 seemed to be free for Ballygunner. Injury for Mike Casey, not a good look. Please God, it isn't the obvious. Would you, Nisha, have Ballygunner as the All-Ireland favourites now? Or are you looking like they've had to come through a fairly bruising Munster? Well, obviously they won well against Killerwan, but, a team that probably came in with injuries and stuff like that, Killerwan probably would give a better account of themselves normally. Na Piarsaigh, obviously a massive contest. Going to have a fairly tough one against Ballyea. Ballyhale seem to be coasting at the moment. Do you see it being a Ballyhale, Ballygunner All-Ireland semi-final?
If that's the draw, yeah, I suppose. Like you'd have to say, because look, to keep like it in Irish, right? You say, the way people say, oh, you get something from down within you, whatever. Like so, in Irish, you say it comes from your liver, right? So it's deeper than your heart. It's and it's the bigger part, whatever. So it comes from your liver, and that's kind of, it was like being there. It was perfectly blatantly obvious that is where yesterday's kind of second half especially came from, and like the understanding between Philip, Paddy Levy, Conor Sheehan and Pádraig, like the way they were able to fight in the second half, especially they were able to find gaps, and there was times like where Philip or Pádraig weren't actually even looking and turning and hitting it across the field. Next thing, Conor Sheehan standing there and he catches it and he gets it and it goes over the bar. I mean, I've been I'm fairly friendly with him, and I'd be friendly enough with his father and all, right, but I have been blowing his trumpet for years. Like he is really, really good, really underrated, really underappreciated. And again, 4 points from play yesterday, and he's in the midfield there against a fella who's getting All-Stars and winning All-Irelands with Limerick. Like, look, so the way they are performing and the way they're going, and they're taking it day to day, and they have that mentality of, look, last year doesn't matter anymore. This is a new team. Look, Pat Fitzgerald is in here now, so there's a new fellow we need to win for. This is the kind of thing they always say, that it's like, well, this lad doesn't know what it feels like to win it, so now we need to win it for him and see what he thinks of it. New lads come in and so on and so on. Like, this is the kind of thing they've always kind of said, that even when I was playing there as well, that Fergal and them, would be all, Fergal Hartley, like, would always be kind of like, well, we need to get these lads up now and get them medals as well. Like, that was kind of always the driving thing. But Yeah, like you'd have to say, look, I mean, the two of them were in the All-Ireland final last year. Ballygunner win by a point. They're still in it. You'd have to say they're the top two. But actually, on the radio now yesterday, I was asked, on Radio na Gaelic, I was asked, Thomases are back, Slaughtneil are still winning, Ballygunner are still winning, and Ballyhale are still winning, and it looks like it'll be them four again. And imagine this now. I was asked, do you think this is getting boring? He goes, I'm just going to put a negative spin on it. He goes, is this getting boring? I said, no, sure, it's the four best teams. You want the four best teams competing for it, right? And you want the best teams playing each other every year. And that's what you want. And enjoy looking at the best teams playing their best hurling, because like when we won the first All-Ireland, like I'd have said at the time as well, right? And look, the proof is in the pudding there. We were the highest scoring team that ever won the Club All-Ireland. Like we were electric that first year, like especially. And going into the second year, I know in the Peership were great and all this kind of stuff, like, but again, it's the same thing. We're still winning, so we're still the favourites. Whereas, like, the same thing with Ballygunner. But I think, I think now this yesterday, and Dara kind of mentioned it as well. He goes, I think that's one of our best ever wins in the club, right? And you think of it, it was on the outside looking in, you kind of go, what are you talking about? It's only a Munster semi-final, but it was a Munster championship game against the Peership. And again, something I kind of mentioned in reference yesterday was something else that they'll be looking to do. Now, look, obviously they have to get over Ballyea, but if Ballyhale are waiting for them in the semi-final, the opportunity to beat Ballyhale 2 years in a row, I don't think any other team, I don't think even Portumna did that. They beat them once and then got beaten the second time. But that would be a huge box to be able to tick and say, look at lads, we are building, we are becoming. Because at the end of the day, look, Ballyhale are the benchmark in club hurling. They just are. And there was always something I'm sure you remember even too, like, and like when we were winning, we were always kind of hoping Ballyhale would win in Kilkenny, because you want to play Ballyhale, right? And it's not like that, oh yeah, we'll beat them or whatever. It was just, no, I'd love to play Ballyhale in the Leinster Championship, and that, because they are the benchmark. Like, you want to play Ballyhale. So yeah, look, Ballygunner and Ballyhale would be the favourites. I think Slaughtneil are right there probably. And again, look, sure, Thomas's are close too. That is the top four, same as last year, and it is the top four. And I think probably Slaughtneil could be ready this year to knock down the door and finally break down and get into an All-Ireland club final. It'll be the first club from Derry to do it. It'd be great. So we'll see. But yeah, Ballygunner, Ballyhale, top two.
Okay, brilliant stuff for joining us, Nisha. Thanks very much.
Sound, lads.
Vincent, one of the things I'd say as well about the way Ballygunner's game plan is so good and they're tactically so aware is that, like, if you look at last year, they got together, I suppose, the middle of the summer, whenever Waterford were knocked out. A couple of weeks after that, the whole team would have been together. They played all the way until February. So they probably had about 3 or 4 months collective training, playing at a really high level, more than most other club teams. And they're doing that probably year after year. So they've probably had double the collective time over the last 10 years than a lot of their competitors that they're going to meet. With Thomas staying together every year, that's an advantage to them as well. The same with Ballyhale. These teams are really getting to know each other inside out. I'd say what it adds to the team spirit is huge as well. And I think that's what makes it very tough to catch up, because you're basically probably playing half the length of the season as these great teams every year.
That's true. And it definitely isn't a coincidence that we're, obviously it hasn't been dictated yet, but the 4 All-Ireland Club semi-finals from last season are still in contention now. And of that 4, 3 of them, and your own Borsley, were the quartet in 2020, and 3 of them plus Cushendall were the quartet in 2019. So the kind of romanticized thing about the club championship is the kind of novelty and the kind of freshness, but in the hurling, it is becoming kind of this dominant, kind of little club are kind of taking it to another level, and other teams it's difficult for them to get there. And even you look at Ballygunner were playing yesterday, and the Peership team were very seasoned in this sort of thing, and they're playing a Ballyea side who, after winning 4 counties in Clare, they won Munster themselves in 2016. So it is harder for a new team. We'll get on to it in a minute. Like St. Finbarr's yesterday, their first taste of it. It is harder for a new team to come along out of nowhere and make an impact. It's just a different, there's a conditioning element, there's an experience element, there's kind of how, I suppose, as you say, you kind of refine your hurling game plan, your tactics are. But I think the other thing from Ballygunner is that the split season has come around at a good time for them. I think rather than it's been able to energize them, I imagine they're able to have a good old break after the Ballyhale win in February. And even, when they won the county final, they have this down to a T now at this stage. Everyone talks about the long layoff affecting the Wexford champions. which it has. Maybe those sides are inexperienced the last couple of years. Rapparees and Ferns, were kind of new champions. But Ballygunner, I mean, the performances that they're putting in their first day out, whether it was away to Ballyer last year or home to Kilruane this year, and then able to kind of obviously tailor the time leading and the preparation and then kind of get their strategy right. It's really, really impressive what they're doing. And then on top of that, the other boost, I think, is the collection of guys who, still not far off the peak of their powers, are stepping away from the inter-county game. I mean, to have Stephen O'Keefe, Barry Coughlin and Philip Manny as the bedrock of your team, but to have them available to you now full-time is a huge, huge thing. And you can't get away with the strength and depth of them, I mean, the fact that they won the Waterford Intermediate this year, they've been so successful underage. It's, it wasn't exactly like the system was broken last year for them in their forward line. Billy O'Keefe was making a pretty big impact when you look at his performance against Shockneal and a scoring contribution against Ballyhale. But then they just and then they just throw someone like Patrick Fitzgerald into it, you look at the quality of players that they have. But I mean, the team has kind of changed a good bit. And it was interesting, I suppose, in the wider sense, like guys like Conor Sheehan was mentioned there by Nisha. I've been really impressed by Ronan Power. Obviously, a lot of talk about Fitzgerald. I mean, like David Fitzgerald was watching yesterday. What other guys from their setup would he maybe kind of look to kind of bring into the frame? But like when Darragh Sullivan was saying yesterday, I think it was one of their biggest wins. I think you can't get away from it for all their success. If they lost yesterday, the record would have been 1 from 5 against Na Piarsaigh. Now, not all the players were obviously involved to come back to. I think it was 2011 was their first time against them down in Walsh Park. The team has changed a lot, but a good few of the players have played in all those games. So I think, they did back up the 2018 win against a team that had been, their bogey team in Munster, no matter which way you look at it. And I think there's different little things that would kind of set them apart now. I mean, obviously, they're the Waterford club with the most number of Munster club medals. But say these players, if you're taking it in groups of players, these players now have 2 Munster clubs. The De La Salle team, 2010, 2012, have 2. I mean, if they beat Ballyer now, they've now won 3 Munsters. I think that absolutely copper fastens their greatness in terms of the province. And then the next step then is if they get that second All-Ireland, as I said, they'll be the first club, first Munster club outside of a Cork side. And like, if you look at it, the Munster Championship, it's only the Galway sides and Ballyhale have managed to win more than one. And Cool obviously have managed to win more than one All-Ireland club. It's something Munster sides just haven't been able to do in the last few decades. So it doesn't seem like there's a situation. Sometimes you see a team win an All-Ireland club or win a provincial or win a county, and that's it. That's all that they kind of wanted to achieve. Like Corofin are a great example in football. They finally got over the line in 2015, haven't been hammering on the door. But God, did they really kind of push on and kind of seize the day in terms of getting a few more. And definitely that intent kind of strikes me with Ballygunner now. Yeah,
Shane Power, and just speaking about the Waterford panel going ahead to next year, with Jamie Barron getting a few injuries in the last few years, do the three of you think, well, obviously Nisha's gone out, Conor Sheehan could be a great partner backup for him at county level. I think he's absolutely outstanding. What I really liked is that when there was these huge battles for possession around the middle of the field, that Sheehan was clever once or twice to peel off into the space, and Pádraig Mahoney found him with a brilliant switch pass at some stage in the second half for one of the points. I do think he could be an option. I mean, at the very least, give him a go and see what he's like. Paul Newtape says, should Davy Fitz pick more of the Ballygunner team for the Waterford County team? I know some of them have chosen to retire. A few of them do not want to go in. Paul would be interesting, though, especially Stephen O'Keefe. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, just Shane, that's a good point you make about the running. Like I think it was his first point of the game. He took a really left wing position. If you remember, Kevin Manny got the ball, and the option would have been maybe to be just stepping outside Kevin Manny about 5 yards, kind of just outside him, and take the chance at that point. But he went way into the space. It was a harder angle to hit from. But obviously, when he got the ball, he had more kind of time then, and I suppose freedom and kind of the room then to kind of put it over. You definitely would have to think that he's going to be into the reckoning. I mean, Tyke Foley, Ronan Power, Paddy Levy have all played Waterford under 20 the last couple of years. Obviously, Patrick Fitzgerald was on the minor hurling team of the year. I don't think that the kind of older players, I'd be surprised if they went back at this stage. I know Stephen O'Keefe has kind of batted away the questions, and obviously, his prowess is unquestioned. Like, he's an absolutely terrific goalkeeper, but just get the sense that guys move on with stages of their lives. Stuff happens for them off the pitch, and you could get a lot of sporting fulfillment, I imagine, at that Ballygunner side. You're after winning the All-Ireland, and you kind of go flat out now. You have a Munster final in a couple of weeks. And then if you keep going, it's a great kind of a thing to be involved in for them. And it's a very kind of obviously a very high performing setup, so maybe that's the kind of way they're thinking. you know,
Do you know what,
there's kind of
Vintage, you make a fair point then on like maybe some of these lads are getting their fulfillment with the club. I mean, you look at someone like Colin Fennelly and you think, yeah, that lad seems to really be enjoying his club career now. You even look at Kula, a couple of the lads who had been involved in Dublin, even though they were young enough, they seem to be getting their enjoyment, or they weren't involved with Dublin. I think some of that was just getting that enjoyment with a club. When you're at a really, really strong club, because maybe the work-life balance is that bit better, you wouldn't be too shocked if some lads just opt for it ahead of county.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could see that more. And you also have, I suppose, the aspect, if you do go in with the county, you're not exactly going to get a break now, are you? You know, I mean,
No.
depending on when their season ends, the championship is over. It's early January, I think it is, the All-Ireland Club, or the All-Ireland finals are mid to late January. So, you know, would you be straight back into a National League setup then if you got that far? You know, look, it's difficult to know. I mean, like right now, it just seems like they have a really, really good thing going for them. They wanted so long to win Munster. They finally got over that line in 2018. Then they had to have another hardship for another couple of years, and the fact that they lost the All-Ireland semi-final, and then obviously the way they lost to Borsallee in the 2019 Munster final. But the way that they've come back now and obviously getting over the line seems to have kind of liberated them last year. And I suppose the real question, probably go on to the second as well, is can Ballier, I suppose, match what they did in 2018 when they should have beaten them in Walsh Park? Or is the issue, are we looking at the more recent evidence and the gap that was kind of apparent last year? It does seem that Ballygunner are kind of gone to another level and that they are going to be very, very strong favourites. But if there's one thing I think to take out of the other game yesterday, it's that Ballier have this knack. They're just one of the most battle-hardened sides, I think, in the country at this stage. When you look at how they win Clare Championship games, and it felt like you were watching a kind of a Clare quarter-final yesterday, the way they were just kind of toughing it out in a game in Cusack Park on a difficult winter's afternoon for hurling.
Yeah, it couldn't have been more of a different game, even though it wasn't that far out the road. 112 to 14 points it finished, and I suppose a lot of the scoring was done by Tony Kelly. Two of those from play late on from the sideline, which were really important. Gary Brennan with that goal in the first half. And you know, the thing about that goal that really struck me was that when he started turning the legs and was running towards goal, one of his teammates, I think it was the guy maybe who was wearing number 10, made a sort of a run out to the side. He initially came towards Brennan, then peeled off to the side, and it opened up the pathway for Brennan to run through. And I think the Bars will be very, very disappointed to let him through. You let man through, you let ball through. You do not let ball. Do not let both through. And I'd say that was a really frustrating one, a big hammer blow. Between that and what I consider a harsh red card on Conor Cahalane, that was, you know, they did so well to keep going and be leading late on. It could have won this game. But the reason I'd say it was a harsh red card for Cahalane is, right, so you shouldn't pick up another lad's hurley and throw it away. But look, this happens in hurling. He went and he threw it. So as he was stretching his arm out, I don't think he was looking to elbow the man. I think he just happened to be throwing it. And then just as misfortune would have it, his elbow ended up connecting with Jack Brown. Maybe Brown could have got up a bit quicker. I'm not entirely sure. But like, it's a red card if you strike or attempt to strike. So I don't think he attempted to strike. He did. There was an accidental collision, I would say, in that situation. And many times that wouldn't be given. So I don't think he attempted to strike. And I don't think it was a purposeful strike. But I know not everyone would agree with me. What are your thoughts?
I suppose when I saw the first look, I thought it was a red card. I hadn't realised it was Jack Brown's hurley. You know, I thought it was his own one, that he was just trying to get him away from him. And I thought in that situation, he has no cause for complaints. I think afterwards, yeah, I can see where the harsh kind of element comes into it. But I can also see if a linesman's glancing up on what he sees in real time. You know, I think it's one of those where the replay illuminated the incident far more and gave you a far better idea of kind of what happened. I think it was that, obviously, was a big talk about in the first quarter, but I think you're 100% right in talking about the goal. I think the manner in which they conceded that was as big a setback in that sort of a game. It always gave Ballier just that kind of cushion on a day when things weren't kind of firing for them in the scoring sense, to the way we're kind of usually accustomed. You know, like Niall DC wasn't as prominent in that sense. Mossy Gavin, in fairness, they get 3 points in play, which is important, but you know, they didn't score as much as we're kind of used to them maybe getting. I think especially the way, if you look at the Cork final, when St. Finbarr's kind of had a bit of a lead built up in the first half, in the second half, any time a Blackrock player basically went to kind of make a run towards the goal, they were basically stopped. You know, it felt like there was it was a responsibility thing, who was actually going in to actually make the tackle. And then once he went that in, and then the shot, the connection wasn't the cleanest, you know. It was a really, really kind of a scrappy goal. A great one for Ballier to get, and a great one for, I suppose, I think Robbie Hogan's persistence in getting Gary Brennan to play. Like, I was reading an interview Kieran Shannon had in the Examiner on Saturday about him, and I think twice this year Brennan told him hurling is not a runner for me this year. You know, he said building a house, first child had just arrived. I think he's doing a third level course in UL. He said my father's a Clondigad manager. Football is all I'll be doing. I think he tried him again after the group stages, but he kind of came back into the frame then once Clondigad got knocked out. And the county semi-final, I think, was the first game he played all year, you know. But you saw his worth to the team yesterday. And that's been kind of proven at different times in the club championship over the last couple of years, you know, especially at this time of year, kind of what he kind of brings to the frame. But it was a brilliant effort, I think, from St. Finbarr's. You know, Cork's record is pretty dreadful in this championship since Newtown won in 2009. And a lot of the exits have been pretty tame and meek. And there have been circumstances where maybe teams haven't won the county, and, you know, how upward I guess they've been afterwards has probably been open to debate. Other times teams just haven't kind of performed. Like, you know, Middleton were probably quite disappointed last year against Kilmallock, but this is probably one of the better ones. Maybe as well a small little thing, go back to what we were saying earlier about the kind of experience. There was just a small little bit of kind of game management that kind of maybe needed to them to try and I suppose kind of get the 2 points ahead. There was one stage, now I thought he was absolutely brilliant all through, Ben Cunningham, but there was one time I think he tried to manufacture a goal in the second half, or in the first half, sorry, which I didn't think was on. In the second half, I didn't think he actually went for a goal, but he just didn't get, like, did you see Keith Dempsey's goal yesterday? Like, he didn't actually seem to hit the ball kind of with that much power. I guess I got it, but it was just so perfectly placed, the trajectory of it was so low. Whereas the one side of goal, maybe the bars got, Cunningham wasn't kind of able to impact. But in fairness, I thought it was him, Ben O'Connor and Ethan Toomey, the kind of younger players that really kind of led them. But I don't know, like, how many times you hear people talking Clare games or afterwards, like, how did Ballier win that? They're looking at a county final or a county semi-final, not just this year, obviously, the way they took it from Aero, but different years. And, like, the standards you judge someone like Kelly at, you were expecting, you know, something like Porrick Manny produced yesterday in the scoring sense. But still, yesterday, Kelly did get 2 points in play, and in a low-scoring game, that's all that kind of matters. And Brandon O'Connell, you know, they did well in terms of, I know they did the extra man, but the way they blocked out the full forward line threat, you know, I thought Paul Flanagan, Brandon O'Connell, Jack Brown, their use of the ball was good, and they just had the know-how. You know, that was simply it. Like, you know, they're a very, very impressive side, the way that they managed to continuously chisel out these results.
Yeah, Hurling 1234 says Conor Cahallan's hard running would have made a big difference. Cunningham, Toomey and O'Connor were very good throughout. TK scoreless up to 43rd minute, but yeah, he did come good late on. I suppose Brandon O'Connell being the match winner at the end, now and again a cornerback does come up and do something great like that. I thought immediately David Sherry against, was it Cushendall a few years ago at Parnell Park in the All-Ireland semi-final for St. Thomas's. He got that late winner that day, yeah. I think.
I was just thinking of Clare defenders, you know, Donald Donovan 2013 and Jason McCarthy or Ed McCarthy? I'm not sure which one. Do you remember 2018, the Clare Galway draw, the last puck of the game in Croke Park in extra time, and the ball was worked to, I think he was playing wing back, and he Jason put it over McCarthy. The bar, you know. But the Bars actually had the possession when they were coming out of the defence, and I think that would probably, again, a kind of a regret for them, you know. And obviously the 65 at the end, which I don't think it was a 65. No. But obviously that was kind of a chance to kind of level it. Like, so yeah, there was kind of different kind of regrets, but I guess it was that kind of one of those games just kind of died with their boots on. Like the commentator there made a good point about Cahallan. Like, he scored a goal in the county final and he set up one. And on a game like that yesterday, where that was the type of, I suppose, strategy that was needed, the kind of running power could have made a big kind of a difference for them.
Yeah, Gerard Cunningham even said himself afterwards that he meant to throw it wasn't intentional in any shape or form, and it was a yellow card. He's vice captain, one of our most influential players. There isn't a dirty stroke in Conor. And look, realistically, I can't ever think of him throwing a dirty stroke in a match. I'd more so have seen him play for Cork than with... but like Ben Cunningham, very unfortunate that he misses that late 65. Like you said, it probably wasn't a 65, and more so turning over possession and therefore conceding the score just beforehand for Brandon O'Connell. That was probably even more frustrating for Gerard Cunningham on the sideline. But Ethan Toomey, Ben O'Connell, these young players for the Bars, they're going the right place, are going the right direction. But there is talk of maybe losing Ben O'Connor to rugby. That would be a massive blow.
Yeah, my understanding is that I don't think there's been a decision made, but you know, he still is in secondary school in Pres in Cork, so he's going to be playing most of the school's cup this year. He was in the frame for their school side last year, would have gone to France last summer. I think he's potentially a guy that could get an offer for a Munster Academy contract. So I think the pitch will become a bit clearer next year. But yeah, it would be a major loss. I mean, not basing everything on a club game in November about how a guy is going to make the step up to added level, but I just thought he was really prominent in kind of dictating the match yesterday, and the way he was kind of coming out of the defence, the couple of points he got in the first half. And obviously you could see, like, they're all the kind of same age group, him, Ethan Toomey, Ben Cunningham, just the understanding between them, you know, like you were talking, I suppose, about kind of, as you said, from playing for each other so long, the Pork Man, he passes yesterday to Conor Sheehan. There was a couple of times Toomey would kind of get the ball, he'd be like, where's he going? But there was one, like, he seemed to be bottled up, and next thing he just switched the ball, and suddenly Ben O'Connor was all on his own, I think just before half time in a load of space at the far side of the Cusack stand ground, and he put it over, you know, and he was really, really good. I think Cunningham is a guy that's been really, really impressive for them this year. Probably not as heralded maybe as the other two, but and maybe kind of unfairly, you know, I would have seen him, you know, as mainly a prominent free taker. But his performance at the county final and yesterday, like, he got one brilliant point yesterday in the second half when he went to hit it off his left and then did the dummy inside after he'd sold the defender and put it over off his right. So it was those kind of younger guys that were really, really kind of prominent. They probably didn't get enough out of kind of scoring wise. Brian Hayes was a bit more prominent in the second half, but like Jack Allan, it was a pretty thankless task being in a two-man full forward line against that kind of defense.
Taking him off, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought a bit of a kind of a strange one. Probably would have kind of maybe left him in there. I thought he was possibly fouled just before it at one stage as well. There was a couple of calls that way, but then I suppose if they got that 65, it would have probably leveled it up in their eyes, any sort of a kind of sense of grievance with the officiating. But thankless enough task when 55 minutes. I mean, Paul Flanagan, Jack Brown, Clare Seniors, Brandon O'Connell, I didn't realize it yesterday, I was reading it, that he's actually been called into the setup now. So fairly tough kind of running around on a heavy November pitch after kind of three defenders, and you're outnumbered there numerically, you know. Just a very, very different type of game, wasn't it? You know, the contrast in the setting and the conditions and the kind of the flow of it compared to the second match. But probably disappointed for the Bars. Like, probably, like, they would have thought a lot of the hurling camp, the way they saw what the football run did last year and what a kind of energy you can get from it, and they probably kind of wanted to tap into that. Give it a good go, you know. But and I think when the comment was speaking there, I thought the Jamie Burns kind of matchup on Kelly worked very, very well. You know, they did pretty well for them from that point of view. So, and I suppose in the Bar sense, it'd be interesting to see kind of Brandon O'Connell getting called into the Clare setup. What kind of guys maybe might make a step up with Cork next year? But I think a lot of attention will be on the future sporting choices of Ben O'Connor, all right.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move on to, actually, one point I wanted to make is, I don't know if you noticed at one stage, Peter Hogan, who was unbelievable for Bannygunner in terms of winning ruck ball, I think at one stage, wasn't he on the floor or down on one knee in the middle of a ruck, rose a ball and then caught it between the Piercing player's legs? I don't know if you noticed that. It was quite exceptional. I'm sure but some of our viewers thought.
Not in the scoring sense maybe, but his role was so important in that second half, you know. And I mean, like, you just take the work he does. Like, I think it was his run and pick up actually paved the way for the Harry Ruddle goal, the famous one last year, and he just does that kind of link work. You know, I would have originally kind of thought him, okay, this guy's a corner forward kind of earlier in his career, but that kind of role at half forward, he's just made for it.
Yeah, he's absolutely class. The Munster Intermediate Club semi-finals were on over the weekend. Roscrea beat Inniscarra 117-39, and Monaleen saw off St. Joseph's Doura Bearfield 213-16. So I watched the Roscrea game, and I'd say they'd be concerned with how they coughed up goals. Colm O'Leary got one in the first half. He was initially being pulled back. Colm Casey. He was initially being pulled back, then he was let go by the defenders. I couldn't believe it, and he lashed it into the top corner. Then Roscrea took over for long spells. Alan Tynan moved out to midfield, and he was very important, scored 4. Evan Fitzpatrick was excellent as a link man around the middle. He scored 2, and Luke Cashin's 1-8 was massive, 1-1 of that from play. His goal was brilliant. There was a high ball played in. Himself and the defender were both going for it. He leaned on the defender, flicked the ball around him, turned into space then, and knocked it into the back of the net. Really good. Then Inniscarra had 2 late goals. Sean O'Donoghue, obviously the Cork captain, corner back, he was playing centre forward. He scored 1, and there's another one late on as well. And they've been the masters of the late goal lately, but time ran out in them. And Roscrea, I'd say the whip will be cracked on them the next couple of weeks by Liam England and Eddie Brennan. But it's interesting that Monaleen are managed by Owen Brislan of Toomey Vara, who are only out the road from Roscrea, and you know they would have had great battles over the years. I'm sure he'd love to get one over on Roscrea, a North Tipperary rival. But Monaleen, good victory over St. Joseph's Dura Bearfield. A lot of people probably feel that Monaleen shouldn't be down in intermediate in the first place, but a great for them, for both of these teams to be heading into a Munster final.
Yeah, it's huge. I think it's probably, in the Tipperary sense, it's a what's the word? Kind of a testament to the change in the system now. You know, Tipper sides haven't made any impact in intermediate in Munster in a good while. But you basically had I think I'm right with these numbers. You have the 17th best side in Tip playing the 25th best side in Cork, which, you know, previously would have been the 33rd best side in Tip was looking at this playing this level. You know, so I think that's a testament to it. I was up at the Tipperary Drawn final senior, and I got most of the end of the Roscrea game. So would have seen them that day. The guys you mentioned, like Cashin, Tyne, and Fitzpatrick, were really, really impressive that day. I suppose it's interesting, we're talking about kind of a rugby in terms of Ben O'Connor not being available. You know, Tynan coming back into the frame, another guy who was big schools cup player with Roscrea College, you know, really, really impressive. And obviously he's going to come back into the kind of hurling setup now. Just great for them now, like a great chance to kind of go push on and kind of make something and obviously they're really impressed with the way they beat Ballysaggart the last day. So obviously there is a sense of impetus with them and the way they're kind of moving on, and one lane kind of similar. I saw somebody yesterday, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I think there was some talk of this final will be played in a Cork venue. Now I understand that they sometimes don't want to put it within a competing county, but like, to me, surely geographically play this in somewhere like Neenah or, you know, Tosford or something like that. It's in the Gaelic grounds, like, but it would just seem a bit mad taking the two of them down in terms of the crowd and all that. I think it's on the 4th of December. I don't think it's fixed yet, but I think if it is on in a Cork venue, that would seem maybe, you know, not the most kind of sensible move, you know. But like Monaleen, I suppose their players, good. Some of them might have had experience kind of with the Munster Club Football Championship over the last couple of years, you know. And like you said, given the size of the place and kind of population, all that, probably wouldn't have felt they should be down at that kind of level. But you know, this Cork clubs have been kind of dominant in this level for a good few years, so it's a good chance for kind of both of them now to kind of push on and get to the All Ireland series, especially when you see that it's Munster v Leinster this year. It's actually, so it's Cork and Kilkenny clubs have been dominant, but the Ainsford are obviously gone already in the Leinster Championship, so it's kind of pretty wide open.
Yeah, Trim got through that game, of course. The goals for Monaleen were scored by Donica O'Dowlick and Mark O'Dwyer. And I think Owen Breslan is currently in the middle of a 3-month suspension, so he's been outside the wire for the last few games. So it remains to be seen if he is also in this final. St. Kieran's of Limerick beat the Banner of Clare in the Munster Junior semi-final after extra time. 81st minute point from I think it was Donny Nealon substitute, made himself the hero there. Shane Meehan, he had scored 12 points for Banner. Then the other semi-final, Ballygiblin beat Colligan of Waterford fairly heftily enough, 119 to 10 points. I think they were 5 points ahead at halftime and kicked on a bit again. So that'll be a final between a Limerick team and a Cork team there. Would you, any idea how the likes of Mark Keane is going? Is he still centre back for Ballygiblin? I presume he is.
Yeah, and I think Colin Manny's kind of moving pretty well also. And
the county footballer,
is Darrow Flynn was kind of injured at different sides this year. He's had Cork on the 20 experience the last couple of years. He's probably another guy that they're looking at. Obviously pretty unusual. I know we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago that they're back in this championship again. Trying to make a go of it and push on to the All Ireland series, but it's probably with the regrading system, which I think is up there with the Kerry County Championship, and how much it confuses you, like, you know. So we'll move on to Galway final, you know.
Yeah, I've given up on trying to understand the Cork grading system. Yeah, the Galway final. Now, this seemed to be an absolute cracker. I was just watching some of the highlights earlier, and from pillar to post, Loughrea more or less led. I think somebody told me that they led for 62 out of the 64 minutes of the game, but then they needed a late equaliser for Tiernan Killeen for the game to now go to a replay next Sunday. But I thought it was like quite striking that Martin McManus scored 3 points inside the opening 2 minutes for Loughrea here on Fintan Burke, a county player who, you know, they had to make a switch at that stage. So that was an incredible start to the game for them. They went well ahead, but of course, St. Thomas's, you expect nothing less but them to come back into it. Aina Burke got a very good goal late on. I think Loughrea will probably be kind of frustrated that they got ahead. They were 4 points ahead late on, and Thomas has found a way back here. But would you look at this? Are you one of those that's in the camp of when an underdog doesn't see it through the first day, they're under awful pressure the next day? Or do you think Loughrea, traditionally they'll feel like, you know, we're well up for Thomas's or anyone who comes our way. We can go again. We showed that we have the quality.
I'm pretty open-minded in terms of the underdog and favourites tag, but I think in this particular game, you have to look at the sides involved. And like I talked about Ballyea earlier in Clare. I mean, St. Thomas's are similar in Galway to this team. I mean, of all the counties they've won, 2018 when they beat Lee Mellis by 9 points is the only one that they've kind of won convincingly. I mean, the last 3 years, the finals have won by 3 points, 2 points, and 2 points again against sides like Clanbridge, Sherlockmore, coming sides that were talked about a good bit in Galway. There are a lot of underage talent, similar to Lockmore or Loughrea now, with kind of a lot of guys who've beaten in Galway underage sides. And I mean, when it was 18-14 yesterday, again, you know, November day, you think you just batten out the hatches and close it out, but suddenly, I'm not exactly sure who was got free to set up the goal for Éanna Burke, but suddenly the whole thing changes again, and then it's a brilliant point by Tiernan Killeen to level it, and the way to kind of manufacture the space on the right wing to kind of get them out of jail. But like St. Thomas just really difficult to beat. Probably will feel they probably made a bit more scope for improvement. You know, looking at the scoring, you know, the two Burkes, Éanna and Dara Burke, kind of in terms of kind of play, seem to carry a lot of the fight. You know, Conor Cooney got a point. Some of his free taking, though, looking at the highlights, was absolutely brilliant. Like, you know, when you think of that goal mouth that he was playing into, that's against the breeze in Salt Hill. That's quite a difficult one. But the way he was managing to control his strike, to get the trajectory of the ball kind of moving at that way, I thought there were some really kind of impressive frees to land, you know, and they just have that kind of battle hardness that is kind of so difficult to beat. And I suppose just the issue, I know it's a completely different team, but Loughrea teams had just such a bad kind of a run into 2000s. Johnny Cohen is probably the only, maybe Paul Homan, the ones left of that are kind of not managing to seal out the deal in finals. This is a new team, granted, you know, the likes of McManus. I think Neil Keary would have been around about then as well, like, you know, but the rest of them, you know, the Shaughnessy's, Martin McManus, Tiernan Killeen, as I mentioned, you know, these are a lot of kind of new kind of players kind of coming into the frame. They haven't been beaten all year. And it did take a fair bit of resolve on their part. You know, you're up by 4, they concede the goal, then they fall behind to actually manage to get the point to kind of draw it. So, you know, there's different ways you can kind of spin it, but maybe there is a bit more kind of scope for improvement in St. Thomas.
Yeah, and especially the way they did it with 14 men. Darren Shaughnessy had been sent off for a second yellow card, and Neil Keary with a lovely little flick ball over the top for Tiernan Killeen to smack it over the bar. And Tommy Kelly said afterwards, this is the Loughrea manager, obviously we were disappointed with sending off. I didn't see it, but knowing Darren, there was nothing in it, and for me it was a poor decision. So didn't see it, but poor decision. And I know, Tommy, that's a good one. Nice way to frame it. They showed great character. Again, we're very proud of him, and not exactly the result we came for, but we're still in it. We're ready to rock next week. The Connacht Junior final, right? So this was in Bacon, and people will know that the Connacht Airdome is on the same grounds. The game finished up Easky 5 points, Ballygar 4 points. So Easky, their first ever provincial adult hurling title. I wonder why this wasn't on in the Airdome, or even like, you probably couldn't say at half-time, lads, this is getting ridiculous. Let's move the second half into the Airdome, because one team probably had the advantage of the wind and then the other team wants the advantage of the wind. But yeah, when you see 5 points to 4, you know, you probably think that the rain is coming in sideways at best along with the wind. I mean, that must have been a slog of all slogs.
Yeah, I've seen games in that pitch. The RT had the Mayo football quarterfinals live last year. I remember it was like messaging Damien and all, or like, you know, it's looking pretty grim where you are today in the OB studio that you have at the side of the pitch there. But it looked a tough old slog to play games there. I'm not sure, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, do hurling games take place in the Dome? Like, is there any issue with height or anything like that in terms of the?
I haven't been in
material?
It to see. Yeah.
I've just seen football games. You know, you see footage early on the year of the Sigerson matches, and there was I think an FBD League game, Galway Roscommon as well. So yeah, look, that is probably kind of the vagaries of this time of year, like, you know, in terms of kind of the weather conditions, and a fair old slog to kind of win a junior final 5 points to 4. Yeah,
so Schlockneil, they're through to the Ulster final. They're going to meet Dunloy in a couple of weeks' time. And I just look at the difference between the way they coasted past Portaferry, 224 to 11 points, versus what Ballygunner had to do to get past Napirshick. And, you know, it's the same, but, you know, the Galway team won't even have to play a provincial. Ballyhale seemingly coasting if we're to go on their current form. Now, maybe they'll have a very tough game, and I'll call it wrong. But Portaferry were without their key man, Owen Sands, was one of their key men. He's on a long planned trip over to Southeast Asia. Schlockneil didn't start brilliantly, because I suppose partly down to it being their first competitive hurling match since the September 25th county final. Second half goals from Brian Cassidy and sub Jerome McGuigan. December 4th is going to be the final. And I was reading Neil Loughran in the Irish News. He was talking, I'll just read out a bit of a segment of his article. He goes, for boss Michael McShane, it was clear that there was no place for resting on laurels after claiming a 10th county title. With Peter McCullough, Rory O'Menon and Shea Cassidy starting ahead of the experienced trio, Mark McGuigan, Gerard Bradley and Jerome McGuigan. And the Ballycastle man, McShane, said, we've seen that all year. And I said in the build-up to the game, this is the strongest panel we've ever had in the 8 years I've been here. With the likes of Peter, Rory and Shea Cassidy coming in and making serious effort at training to come into the team and showing really, really well. It was a difficult decision because the likes of Gerard Bradley, he's twice Ulster Hurler of the Year in the last few years, but that was just down to form and training and so on and so forth. So great win there. And then the intermediate semi-finals, Middletown na Fianna beat Aero Carrickmore 319 to 220, Leitrim Gales 221, Gael Cluna 115. But yeah, that's a brilliant win for Schlockneil, and I think that'll be a pretty tasty game against Dunloy. Haven't seen Dunloy this year. I think it will be.
It will, and I think that Schlockneil, the sense of ambition and the kind of drive to kind of push on definitely doesn't seem to have been diluted, and it's impressive the way they've looked at maybe the way things didn't go right from the All-Ireland series before. The Ballyhale one, sorry, of 2020 is obviously the one that they kind of felt that they could kind of came closest to, but even like go back to the PRC 2018 and did a 2-man advantage and could manage to kind of close it out. I think it was probably a bit more decisive. You know, Desi Hutchinson probably was the difference in the Ballygunner game last year, but maybe just kind of strengthening the panel and strengthening the options. And in terms of sustaining their challenge, that like, you know, they seem to kind of really performing at a really, really high pitch for over 45, 50 minutes of these games. So maybe the sense is if we strengthen the panel, you have those couple of options maybe to bring in the last 10, 15 minutes. But so first of all, they have to get over the Ulster final against Dunloy. I think it's very good for both of those sides that whoever wins it, that the All-Ulster final is 2 weeks later, you know, because sometimes the Ulster final from memory has been in October. Maybe you could have the Ulster Club Hurling final on, you know, 3rd week of October. And then you're looking at possibly in the old system, you would have had a 3-month wait, which probably didn't help them in the year you would have played Schlockneil with 2017 in Armagh.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been a system, I imagine, that they were waiting 3-4 months for that game, you know. So I think the impetus will be good for them that whoever wins, you're playing 2 weeks later. And obviously, whoever they're playing as the Galway champions, who know of an extra game, given that you have a replay ahead next Sunday, you know. But definitely, there doesn't seem any sort of shortage of motivation in Schlockneil, and maybe probably don't want to admit it, and maybe it isn't something that they wanted to happen, but maybe the football fortunes lessening slightly in Glen coming along. In Derry, maybe the focus on one code has helped a small bit. Look, this is probably an easy thing, you know. They would have said maybe different times that they kind of fed off each other when the two sides were kind of going well and juggling in both, you know. But it has just been all hurling over the last couple of weeks now.
Yeah, so I don't know, how much of the football you saw over the weekend? Sorry, first off, I want to mention that St. Vincent's beat Owler to Bala in the Leinster Senior Camogie Club final, so that's a great win there, held off a late rally from Owler. But in the football, Saturday evening at Croke Park, the Downs beat Rathode 218 to 17 points, and we've already talked about a lay free from Ben Cunningham, sadly for him not going over, but Jack Flynn had a 67-minute kick from I think it was just under the Cusack stand around the 21, a chance to level the game, having been 6 points behind. And, you know, unfortunately for him, it didn't go over the bar. But it kind of ended with drama. But the whole way throughout, this was a cracking advertisement for Club GA, an absolutely brilliant match. Luke Loughlin, I think, was pretty much the star man there. I think he got man of the match. He put a nice few scores together. I think he scored 5 in total. An excellent game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, so this was the one of the two games. This is the one I watched. I kind of switched off after about 10-15 minutes of the second game, turned to the rugby. But no, it was a really, really good game, you know. And you can sometimes find that. I remember really enjoying Naas Shelmaliers last year as well. Maybe teams that you're not as familiar with these Leinster semi-finals that are televised live. A small thing which I thought added to it, I know, do you think this visually, the fact that RT put the camera in the Cusack, you know, just facing the fans, it just gave it a little bit of more atmosphere. Like, it was kind of, in the hurling sense yesterday, it was kind of strange. You were looking at this game, you were hearing all these shouts, but obviously you were looking at an empty stand opposite the uncovered in the Gaelic grounds, and it was only when in the replay shots they go to the fans and you can't see them. But I just thought that was a small thing that was kind of good. But I thought the Downs were brilliant to watch. You know, once they got that first goal, and then the timing of the second one, they had a really, really good, strong third quarter. But then the whole thing changed on the sending off, and there was they were getting completely pinned in. and the kick out, and like Daithí McGowan was kicking some unbelievable points. It was a pretty tricky free now, in fairness to Jack Flynn, was it, to try and get it. It was kind of narrow enough, and he would have had to get a good bit of curl on it, and obviously he was kind of bending it to the far post, but it just didn't kind of carry in a good bit. I think if they'd gone extra time, the Downs, it would have been a bit of a sucker blow for them if they hadn't managed to hold on. But pretty cool thing now for them, 50 years on. You imagine they've probably grown up the whole time hearing about this team of 72 that got to a Leinster final, and they've seen the likes of St. Lomans were in Leinster, Gary Castle won it, Tyrrell's passed before, and to be another Westmeath side now in a Leinster club final, they'll obviously be underdogs given the strength of Kilmacud Crokes, but a cool thing for them to achieve.
Yeah, and I thought, just the quality of the shooting, especially in that first half, was unbelievable.
Yeah, some of Luke Loughlin's points, like the camera angle of them, the way he was kind of catching them and bringing them in on his left foot were brilliant.
Yeah, Kilmacud beat Port Arlington 112 to 4 points. Last year, the game was very tight. There was only a score in it at the end of the game. I think once Andy McGowan's, it looked to me like it was a shanked attempt for a point, and it ended up sneaking into the top corner of the net.
Yeah, I'm struggling to give him the benefit of the doubt now that he meant that.
Yeah, and wasn't it a bit of a gut punch for Port Arlington? And they never really landed a glove on Crokes throughout this game. And I think it kind of said it all when Shane Walsh was taken off with 27 minutes to go. It was 1-7-2 at that stage. Didn't look injured. Port Arlington didn't score their first from play until the 47th minute. But, once he was taken off, it just said to me that, this game is done.
Yeah, I think the build-up to this game was interesting. Like Robbie Brennan talked straight away after the Naas match. Port Arlington was the hardest game we had last year. And I think they had their homework done and they learned from them a lot. Like the running game that Port Arlington had last year that was really catching them. Those channels were getting blocked up. Port Arlington were really good last year, kind of these long kick passes into the full forward line. Kilmacud were able to get the extra body back and they paid particular attention to the matchup. So they really
They caught out so many kick passes, didn't they?
Exactly, yeah. And that really, really caught them, seemed unawares last year. Maybe Port Arlington were a side they probably hadn't come across before, but definitely it seemed had the homework done on this occasion. And maybe it can be difficult for the underdog in that situation. Like everyone's saying to Port Arlington, you were really close to them last year. You put it up to them. You won't be that far off from this year, but obviously Kilmacud. So as we talked about kind of Ballygunner earlier, looking to push on after their All-Ireland. Fairness, the way they've kind of come back and the way they're kind of looking to rebound. Look, you can't get away from the fact, not helped hugely by the fact that with the level of attacking addition that they've got in the form of Walsh, who's just absolutely class, and maybe didn't need him to be as influential here as maybe as he was in the Curry final against Nafina. But fairness, a couple of their other forwards, like some of the points in the first half, Shane Cunningham and Dan O'Brien got, like you mentioned, the start about Port Arlington from play. Like they got 2 points in quick succession. Or was it Darren Mullen? I think it might have been Darren Mullen actually is one I'm referring to. Absolutely brilliant to watch. And look, they'll be pretty big favourites now, I think, to win the next day against the Downs, given their experience. And then you're looking at them against the Munster champions semi-finals next Sunday at the All-Ireland semi-final stage. Yeah,
ML89 says, for all their talent, Crokes are a very poor watch. Them in Kilcoo was one of the worst club finals ever. I know they won't care, but still, for all the talent they have, you'd expect more. I thought there was a Hawkeye call at one stage. I think it was going into I can't remember which end anyway, but there was a Hawkeye call and it showed and it looked like it was a few meters wide, like one of those ones where there's no way that the referee, linesman and umpire, that none of them saw it. And I had people replying to me saying, well, look, it doesn't necessarily always, the graphical representation isn't always necessarily what happened. So sometimes it's just showing you that it's wide. It's not exactly giving you exactly where it went wide. But then I thought sometimes they show you and the wide is like it clipped the post and went wide and it gives wide and that's fine and fair enough. But just to me, if the Hawkeye visual representation isn't exactly what has happened, then to me it's just a further reason to distrust it.
Yeah, no, that's true. And look, it's the latest in this year. It hasn't been exactly a good year to kind of resounding for the systems. I mean, I haven't seen that before in terms of usually when the shot happens, the graphic does seem to kind of tally up. But if there is a discrepancy, that's obviously something that's, as you say, it's not really going to kind of lead to much kind of trust in what the viewer is seeing or the fan who's looking at the big screen on the game, But it hasn't exactly been a good year for the system, I think, in general, in terms of trust and kind of people feeling that it's right, And I think that element of doubt is definitely starting to creep into people's judgments.
Yeah, Brian Sheehy, who plays cornerback, well, he plays both codes basically. He could be in a tricky one next month if Crokes get to the final in both the hurling and the football. Obviously, they have Mullins in the semi-final. the hurling. But both games are going to be a double header. The Leinster finals are going to have the football at 1:30 and then the hurling at 3:30. Now he starts with the hurlers, and you'd kind of think, oh yeah, sure, maybe like he's not really been used by the footballers. Maybe he could just sit on the bench for the footballers, won't be used, and then play the hurling. But you don't necessarily want the corner or full back of your hurling team sitting out in the cold for an hour and a half before then warming up for a match. So he may have to choose, assuming that they can beat Mullins. But anyway, that's just
I think those fixtures are locked in kind of for TV purposes, because they've moved the Munster finals to the Saturday this year in hurling and football, so that there isn't like, it used to be kind of pretty unsatisfactory if you're a TV viewer before the kind of delayed coverage. There used to be a third game on at like 5:30 maybe on TG Car. So human nature being what it is, trying to not check the result was kind of difficult. So at least I think the Munster hurling is live 3:15 on Saturday, December 3rd. So at least you're watching that, and then you have the two Leinster games live the next day.
Yeah, Mike Cullen beat Strokestown after extra time 2-8 to 7 points. That was in the Connacht semi-final. It was a bit of a free-taking contest from what I could see. And when you consider how good Mike Cullen were against Westport, like against Westport, they had 24 shots, scored 21 times, whereas Westport 27 shots, 13. So you can see they were really good at both ends of the pitch here. But Strokestown took them all the way before ultimately a couple of goals in extra time made all the difference there. And Owen Kelly was shown a black card and Keith Murphy was sent off for Strokestown. So obviously that wasn't ideal either. Then in the other semi-final, Turlestrane, they're into a first Connacht final since 1982 after beating St. Mary's of Kiltokert, a Leitrim side, 8 points to 6. And Turlestrane were 6 points to 2 at half-time. You wouldn't have thought that St. Mary's would fail to score in the second half there, but great for Turlestrane because it's the 7th time in a row. Obviously, there was the COVID year when they wouldn't have got to represent the county in the province. But they're probably the most experienced team in this Connacht Championship. So they probably won't be going in with any inferiority complex against Mike Cullen.
No, and you imagine that it would have started to grate the fact that they had 7 titles, but weren't actually converting them into much progress in Connacht. And like when they looked at it this year, Corofin gone, Castlebar Mitchell, St. Bridget's, the last year's 2 finalists, Knockmore, Padraig Pierce's, it would have felt wide open. But the thing about Mike Cullen, they do seem, I know it's their first time in the Connacht Senior Club Championship, but they do seem really, really strong and know what they're about, and like a really good management team and a lot of very, very good players who've done well with Galway this year. A bit similar to Glen and Derry, like I did think last weekend, on a weekend when, the complexion of the club football championship has changed. Like at the start of last weekend, of the 16 sides that were left in the All-Ireland Club Football Championship, only 3, Clonmel, Kilmacud and Kilcoo, had won a provincial title before. So compared to the experience thing we were talking about the hurling yesterday, it's very different. But definitely felt like Mike Cullen, Glen and Clonmel commercials in between them all kind of issued really big kind of statements of intent. Mike Cullen still probably our favourites. It's on in Pierce Stadium as well. It's been fixed this morning for 1:30 Sunday, December 4th. But from Turlestrane's point of view, it's not like you're facing a Corofin or St. Bridget's club with a huge, long-standing kind of series of successes in this competition and tradition. So you're right in what you're saying. Yeah, probably won't be overawed by it.
Yeah, so we'll go through the last few fixtures then. The Ulster Club Junior semi-final, Stewartstown Harps of Tyrone beat Letterkenny Gales 2-15 to 2-5 there. Dan Lowe hit 1-6 and Drumlane beat Newtown Butler. And Drumlane had beaten Craigban and Clones by a point. But inside forwards, Daryl McGurran and Michael Owens, they hit a combined 2-7. Leinster Intermediate semi-finals, Dunshaughlin beat Cooley Kickham's 14 points to 6. St. Mogues Feathered had a 7 points to 5 win over Kilkenny side Mullinavat. Leinster Junior semis, Castletown beat Clonmore 10-7, and St. Albans of Adamstown had a 1 point win over Multi Farnham, 8 points to 7. So 2 pretty low scoring games there. Then also Connacht Intermediate semi-final, St. Dominic's versus Aucknasheelan was postponed due to the pitch. I think that was just beforehand as well. And Dunmore McHale's beat Ballyhaunis 111 to 1-8. And then finally the Connacht Junior semi-final, Clifton beat Island Edie 110 to 11, and the winners will play St. Ronan's. So who's your goal of the week in hurling and who's your goal of the week in football?
Goal of the week in hurling, I think Padraig Manny. He scored 13 points against the side like the Pearshig and 6 from play. It's pretty kind of difficult to overlook. And I'm going to stick with the forward team. I'm going to go Luke Loughlin. If you're kind of man of the match in Croke Park and your club get to the first final in 50 years, I think that's fair going. as well.
Yeah, do you know what? I can't argue with either. I'm going to have to go with you on both of those. So that's it from the show today. A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Thanks very much, Fintan. We'll do it again soon.
No worries, Shane. Talk to you soon.